Struggling to find a beginner-friendly crochet pinecone pattern? Follow these easy steps to make pinecones in 3 unique shapes and sizes. Hi, this is Krista at the Secret Yarnery. Today I'm showing you how to crochet these adorable pine cones, perfect for fall decor, holiday wreaths, or even a woodland-themed project. They're super easy to make, and I'll guide you through each step. In this super easy tutorial for beginners, I'm going to be showing you how to make 3 different shapes or 3 different styles of pine cones, and also 3 different sizes. So you can make each of these different shapes into 3 different sizes. This is just from changing your crochet hook size. So you can do small, that is a 4 millimeter. Medium is a 5 millimeter. And the large is a 6 millimeter. So you're going to need yarn, 2 colors. So one for your pine cone and one for your stem. I'm using a size 4 worsted weight acrylic for mine. It is any regular acrylic yarn and is in as many shades as you have that you like. For this tutorial, I'm going to be using a 5 millimeter crochet hook. You will also need 4 stitch markers, a needle for sewing in your ends, and a pair of scissors. Here are the timestamps. You can jump back into where you left off, and let's get started. We're going to start by making the small one. To start, we're just going to be making a slip knot any which way you normally do, and you want to leave about a 4-inch tail. Just make a slip knot, shrink that down, and pop it onto your hook. We're going to chain 30. 1, 2, 3. If you'd like to follow along with a written pattern, all of my patterns are available on my website, secretyarnery.com, and all of my patterns are written in plain English, just like I was sitting there right beside you. 29 and 30. Now just lay that out pretty little V's facing up, and we're going to pop in our stitch markers. So starting at the side where our hook is, we don't count what's on our hook, we're just going to count these pretty little V's after, and we're going to count to 5. So there is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We're going to pop a stitch marker right there. And we're going to do that again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We're going to pop a stitch marker right there. And then at the other side, we're going to count 5 back. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 right there. So pop a stitch marker into that stitch or into that chain. So this is how we're going to be doing our small pine cone. And now we want to be working into the top loop of our chain. So we're just going to be working right into these top loops right there. So into the second top loop, that's where we're going to start right here. So skipping a chain and working into the second. We're going to do 4 single crochets into that same chain. So into the same spot, 4 single crochets. And we're going to do that into each chain, including the one with the stitch marker. So 4 single crochets into each chain, up to and including the stitch marker. So you can pause the video and just keep working along. 4 single crochets into each chain, just popping them into that top loop, just like that. And now the one with the stitch marker is the last one that gets single crochets. So 4 single crochets into the same chain as the stitch marker. You can pop that stitch marker out. And now into each of the next 5 chains, the same top loop we're working into, we're going to be doing half double crochets. So 4 half double crochets into each chain, all the way up to and including the stitch marker. If I'm going too fast, you can slow me down or speed me up or pause the video. You can just hit that gear on the video right now and speed me up or slow me down. And then into that same chain as the stitch marker, we're doing our last 4 half double crochets. And you can pop that stitch marker out if it's in your way. There we go. And now we're going to be doing the same thing, but 4 double crochets into each chain all the way along, and we're not working into the one with a stitch marker. So all the way along until we reach the stitch marker. So wrap your yarn, 4 double crochets into each chain. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we're going to do that into each chain all the way along. So pause the video, 4 double crochets into each chain, and I'll meet you when you get closer to that stitch marker. So that's what mine looks like when I get up to that stitch marker. Don't worry about how it's all twisted around. We'll finish that or work on that when we are finished. So now you can pop that last stitch marker out, and into the remaining 5 chains, we're going to be doing 4 half double crochets into each. Just sliding your hook in and 4 half double crochets into each chain all the way along until we're finished this row. So you can pause the video and get your 4 half double crochets done. I'll meet you when you get right there to the end. There we have it. We are finished. We've worked into every chain going all the way along. So now we can cut your tail. We want to leave about 12 inches because we're going to be using this to hold our pinecone together. And then just chain 1 and pull that tail through. So that secures all of your stitches. And now go back to the tail, the end of it where we began. And you can see it's nice and twisted around there. Looks super cute. So just keep kind of unfolding it and lining it up as you go along. Just unfolding those curls. Don't worry about how it looks or how it lines up. We can still adjust all of that later. Just push those big wrinkles out of the way so that you have circles going all the way around. So that's the first step. Now you can look at it and you can customize it. So if you twist it more, you'll get a skinnier pine cone like that. And if you open it up, you'll get a fatter pine cone. So this is another way you can customize each of your pine cones so that they look a little bit unique. You could also twist that center bit to make it a little more pointy if you like, just depending on what you want your pine cones to look like. Now we take our tail and we want to thread this onto our needle. I like using sharp tip needles for this. They are linked in the description box down below. But if you have a blunt tip, you of course could use that. Sharp tips just work into the fibers, so it's a much more secure finish. I'm going to twist that up a little bit. There we go. Now, right where our yarn finished, just make sure it tapers a little bit in at the top, like a natural pine cone. And then wherever it lands, just go into that row underneath to secure that tip or the end of our work, and then slowly stitch it back so your yarn ends near the middle. It doesn't have to be perfectly in the middle, just closer to the center of that circle. Just like that is fine. Now get it looking cute again, how we like it to look. And then just pop your needle right down the center. We are going to push it out so we can scrunch up all those layers. Push them down so our needle can come out the bottom. Doesn't matter exactly where, we just want to be able to get the needle out of the bottom of our pine cone. And we don't want to pull it too snug yet. And now we're going to go right back up in a slightly different spot. So pick a different spot and go right back up. Now we can come out a little bit on one side. Doesn't have to be smack dab in the middle. But if it is, it's fine. And get that needle out. Before you pull your yarn, massage it so that all those rows are how you like them. Now we can tie these together to secure them. So our tails are going to be super secure. Don't pull it too snug right now. We just want it flat. The second time you can pull it a little more tight. But the third time is when you can really pull it. So now, especially because we're using acrylic yarn, you can really pull it nice and snug. If you are using a natural fiber, be careful on making that knot because your fibers can snap, and we don't want that. Now we can just sew in this tail, and now we're ready to add the stem. Now grab a slightly different color yarn to make your stem, and we're going to leave a longer tail, maybe about 10 inches on each side, so we can go back down into our pine cone. So to make your stem, just make a slip knot any which way you normally do. Shrink that down and pop it onto your hook. And you can chain either 3 or 4. So for my pine cones, I like to do a little bit of variety. So sometimes I will chain 3 and sometimes I will chain 4. It doesn't matter. It just makes them a little bit different. Now it's a little bit hard to see these back loops with this darker color yarn. So I'm just going to be using this lighter color to show you so you can see it. So there is my chain 3 or chain 4. Just roll that to the side so we can see these back loops. The first back loop is right underneath the working yarn, and we want to work into the second and third back loop. So into the second back loop, just slide it onto your hook with your finger and make 1 slip stitch. Now slide the next back loop onto your hook and slip stitch. Turn your work or rotate it a bit so you have both of your tails up top. And we're going to slip stitch with both strands to finish off. And cut your tail. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug those down to secure. And then there are your stems. This is a chain 4 and this is a chain 3. So you can see it's just a little bit bigger. So I just make a mix of these depending on which stem I want to put onto which pine cone. And there is a darker one to go with my pine cone. And then I just vary the color I'm doing for the stem so it's different from the body of the pine cone. So thread one of those tails onto your yarn needle and go right back down the center because we want our stem to be coming out of the center of our pine cone. So all the way down. Or almost all the way down. It doesn't have to go through the very tip of your pine cone. So I'm just doing the 1 strand right now. So it came out from that side. I'm just going to put it 1 stitch over the same area. Right back up. And I want it coming out quite close to where my stem is. See, it came out right there. And then I'll massage it back down. We don't want that one making it tight. Now we're going to do the same thing with the second tail. And then before you pull that one through, just make sure that it hasn't shrunken too much or gotten too short. And then just delicately pull that guy up. These 2 tails, we can knot them gently at first. And then a little more. Depending what you're doing with your pine cones, you could just cut those off right now, or you could sew them back down inside because we've already knotted them and secured it. Now our pine cone is quite firm, quite dense. It doesn't really come apart anywhere. So there is your super cute first pine cone. You can make a whole bunch and your shape will get better each time that you practice it, each time you try. And now I will show you how to make the other 2 sizes. To make the tall pine cone, we are going to start with a chain 40. So same way as we did before, chain 40. So there is my chain 40. Grab your stitch markers. Starting with where our hook is, we don't count what's on our hook, but we're going to put a stitch marker into the 5th chain. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to pop a stitch marker. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to pop a stitch marker. And now starting on the other end, we're going to count back 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can just pop a stitch marker right into that stitch. So now we're going to do the same thing, 4 single crochets into each chain, 4 half double crochets into each chain, 4 double crochets into each chain, and 4 half double crochets into the last section. So into the second chain, 4 single crochets, 2, 3, and 4. And now 4 single crochets into each of the next 3 chains, including the one with the stitch marker. You can pop that stitch marker out. Into the next set of chains, we're going to be doing 4 half double crochets. So into each chain, 4 half double crochets. And into the chain with the stitch marker, the same 4 half double crochets. Pop that stitch marker out, and into each of these chains, or each of the next chains in this section, 4 double crochets. 4 double crochets into each chain. So mine looks like that when I get close to that stitch marker. So into the stitch with the stitch marker, you can pop that out now. We're going to do 4 half double crochets into each of those last chains. So 4 half double crochets into each chain to finish off our tall pine cone. So there is my 4 half doubles into those last chains. And chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew up and down your pine cone. Pull your hook up and your yarn through. Snug that down to secure. And now just assemble it the same as we did before. So just turning all of those layers so the circles line up. So there is the tall one, and you would just be threading your needle and assembling it the same way as we did for the small size. And now I'm going to show you how to do the fat one. To start the fat pine cone, leave about a 6-inch tail, make a slip knot and chain 35. So there is my chain 35. This is when we need our 4 stitch markers. Then you can count back from your hook, not including what's on your hook. We can count 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and pop a stitch marker. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pop a second stitch marker. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Pop a third stitch marker. And then from the top, we're going to count back 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then count back 5 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we're going to be making our fat pine cone the exact same way as the others, starting with 4 single crochets, 4 half double crochets, 4 double crochets, and then into each chain here in our middle section, 5 treble crochets into each of these chains, then 4 double crochets, and then 4 half double crochets to finish. The same as the others, we're going to start into that second chain with our 4 single crochets. And 4 single crochets into each of the chains, including the one with the stitch marker. You can pop that stitch marker out, and into the next set of stitches, or the next set of chains, we're going to do half double crochets. So 4 half double crochets into each of the chains in the next section. Into each of the chains in the next section, 4 double crochets into each chain. Into each of the chains in the next section, we are going to be doing 5 treble crochets into each. So wrapping your yarn twice and going into that chain, we're going to make 5 treble crochets into each chain. So this is what is new for the fat one. So there's my first one, my second, third, fourth, and fifth. So it's a lot of stitches into each of those chains, 5 treble crochets. You can pause the video, keep working along, 5 triple crochets into each chain, and I'll meet you when we get to the next stitch marker. Now when we get to our next stitch marker, this is where we're going to be starting our next stitches because we counted back from the end of our chain. Just pop that stitch marker out, and into the next set of chains, we're going to do 4 double crochets into each. So 4 double crochets into each chain. And when you get to the next stitch marker, just pop that out, and into each of the last chains, we're going to do 4 half double crochets into each. Just like that. Don't worry if it looks all funny. And then chain 1 to secure your yarn. Leave a tail almost about 18 inches. We're going to be using this tail to sew our pine cone together. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. Now find where it stopped being pretty, where it stopped lining up, and just go along and untwist it section by section until all those circles are stacked. To get it looking like a pine cone, you can twist some sections tighter and you can untwist some sections to make them wider. So that's how we are adjusting what our pine cone will be looking like that. And now go ahead and finish off this pine cone the same as you did for the others. So I hope you enjoyed that tutorial as much as I did. I'm waiting for you in that video up there, and stay hooked.